Okay, so we were saying that printing, the printing process when it began, it helped people to become more educated. Information was distributed to the masses rather than a couple of people writing something down and then having to rewrite it and rewrite it and rewrite it. This way it was printed multiple times and it could be distributed to the masses. So it was almost like during the industrialized era where machines became or started to become more used and better and developed. Same things happen with printing. Okay. So we said printing is basically the repetition. You need a plate. So throughout history, printing obviously has changed. But the first types of printing were used with these little stamps. And they were used for branding, basically. Okay? So they branded prisoners and they branded animals. That just kind of goes to show you where the thought process was. Animals and prisoners were basically on the same playing field. Okay? The materials that they used were clay tiles, wood, metal. The first molds or plates. They were their first molds and plates, yep. And then paste images or symbols, whatever they wanted printed on, whether it be numbers or letters or whatever. That's how they were put on. So the first recorded prints, were done in China. And they used something called wood blocks. Now, wood block print is basically wood, and part of the wood is carved out. It's a relief type of print, just like we're doing, where part was carved out. Whatever was left higher, the ink went across it, and that's how it printed. Okay? This is called a diamond sutra. So there's different materials used to make printing plates, okay? There's linoleum, which usually is carved out with special tools. We're going to use styrofoam just because it's easy and fast and easy to work with. There's metal, cardboard, stone, whatever materials you can use to either carve into or stack up to make a printing plate. You need areas that are higher and lower. Okay, because wherever the higher areas are, that's what's going to print. Wherever the lower areas are, that's what's not going to print. Okay, so if you are either subtracting from the plate, that's one method. If you're adding to the plate, that's a whole nother. Okay, down here is a lithograph on a stone. It's basically you're scratching the image into the stone. Ink is rolled over the stone. Paper is applied to the top, and whatever areas are highest, that's what prints. So what we are going to be doing is the relief printing, okay, the very top. There's intaglio, there's lithography, and then there's serigraphy. Now serigraphy or stencil is basically your t-shirt printing. Okay, they use a screen with ink, the image is on the screen, they push the ink through the screen and it goes on to whatever you are putting it on. Stencil, same thing, you cut out a shape, you put the ink in that negative space. That's what's printed. Okay, that's serigraphy. Lithography was the stone that we just saw. Scratch the image into the stone, ink is applied, paper over the top, whatever's higher gets printed. Intaglio is done on metal, where acid is used to eat away parts of the metal. That's the lower part. Ink is applied to the higher parts and then it's printed. And then relief prints are like your wood cuts, your styrofoam, your linoleum printing. Sadly, we've gotten away from linoleum because I remember doing that in elementary school. And sadly, we've gotten away from it just because the tools are sharp and kids hurt themselves because they don't listen to what they're supposed to do. But yeah. So anyway, with the relief print, like I said, the design is carved into the block of wood, linoleum, styrofoam, whatever. The brayer is rolled over the top with the ink, and then you put that paper over the top and you rub it out, rub the paper to make sure that the ink transfers, and then you lift it up. So you can see this is just a black and white print. This is a 3-color, looks like 3, possibly 4-color print. So printing, nowadays, you know, printing is everywhere, you know, but way back when it first started, it was used on textiles, okay, or cloth, used for decoration, playing cards, calendars, lots of book illustration, you know, books are printed. One of the only things that's kind of a dying thing with e-books and things that are so much on the computer now, there's not a whole lot that needs to get printed. You can download a book, and it's a lot cheaper to download a book off of a website versus buying the hardcover or whatever. Some people still like the feel of a book, and they'll always be the printed books. But now that we have all these newer technologies, the printing factor is kind of gone. Think about it with digital photography. You know, we used to have to take a picture and then, heaven forbid, wait to go get it developed, and then you get to see, you know, I remember grabbing my envelopes and looking through my photos to see what printed and what didn't print, because you took a picture, you didn't know if it was a good picture or not sometimes, so you'd get like a whole film of blah, or you'd get a whole film of you have a couple blah in there, you know, but now everything's instant. You take your picture, you can see exactly what it looks like. You can go to your home printer, print it off. You don't have to wait for anything. You know, everything is instant. I heard this the other day, we are the most photographed society and the least printed. Because we used to have to always print our photos. I remember getting doubles so you could give them to other people too. So if you took a picture of somebody, you get doubles made, and then you could share your pictures with whoever was in your picture. Now it's like, take a picture, put it on Facebook, take 8 people, and you know, they can download the picture, and you know, so it's so much more instant now than what it used to be. But printing has also gotten easier with computers and things. So these are a couple of more famous relief prints. So intaglio is the opposite of what we're going to do with relief printing. So the ink is pushed into the lines, and then it's wiped off the surface of the plate. And then the final image is, you know, what is this from right here? Dollar bill, okay? So it's pushed, the ink is pushed in versus rolled on top. And then that ink it's kind of reverse, like a reverse process. So you're pushing it into the grooves rather than putting it over the top. And that's where, like I said, metal and plexiglass can be used to do that. So here's some historical applications: postage stamps, wallpaper, money. You can get a lot better texture and detail with intaglio printing. But here are some Pablo Picasso. Everybody's heard of Pablo Picasso. But he used intaglio for some of his stuff. Also, Escher with the black and white. He's the one that holds the ball, looks into the ball. He does the, you see his stuff in a lot of math books because it's kind of technical. Lithography or lithographs, that's the one that's drawn into the stone, limestone. and you can do a lot more with lithography, because you can do a lot more detail work and add more color too. It's also sent through a press. You can use metal plates, but it's a lot harder than using limestone, because limestone is a softer stone and you can carve into limestone a lot easier. But it's very expensive. Very expensive process. And there's some applications, posters, long time ago. That was the really that was the popular way to use printing, newspapers too. And there's some of the, everybody knows the screen, some of the Toulouse-Lautrec, different posters down there. Screen printing, probably one of the most familiar types of printing. That's where, like I said, you use a screen. It's also called serigraphy, where you take and you burn, and not literally burn, but you use a chemical, you put the chemical on the screen, you use a light and a chemical to put that image into the screen, and then you can push the ink with a squeegee through the screen and onto the paper or onto the fabric or whatever you're printing on. Andy Warhol, you guys ever hear of Andy Warhol? Yeah, he's the one that did like the different soup cans and the celebrities. He did serigraphy. That was his deal. Weird guy, but lots of controversy with his art. There it is. Lots of controversy with his art as to if he really was the one that did it, because he had little extra history on Andy Warhol. He had something called the Factory. He had a place called the Factory. And he purposely called it the Factory because he had people working for him. And what would happen is he would have these people that would help him with his prints. Well, people started to question, is Andy Warhol actually doing these prints? Because he would get tons of money for selling these prints because he was this famous artist. Well, then there was questions of, is it actually his work, or was it one of his assistants that was their work? And he was just using his name to stamp across it to make the money on it. So there was lots of controversy and weird guy. Talented, did stuff that other people at the time weren't doing, but I had to do a report on him in college, and he's odd man. Odd man.
What makes him so weird?
He had lots of like little idiosyncrasy kind of things. Like he was afraid of death, and would stay away from hospitals, and like just like would drive around blocks around a hospital and do like, he was so afraid of death. But he had major eating disorder. He was anorexic. He was bulimic. He, like, just did, like, he was afraid of death, but he did all these things that brought him closer to it. You know what I mean? Yeah. He wasn't a healthy person whatsoever. He was kind of crazy. You know, he had all these, you know, he'd do all these celebrity things, and then he hung with celebrities. He hung, like, even in the 80s. And his, you know, he supposedly was homosexual, but nobody really knew for sure because he just partied with everybody, and it was just weird. Like, he's just an odd type of man. And he's the one that had the hair all kind of crazy, and he was just real flamboyant and, you know, good, talented artists, but there's something about artists. I don't know, they're all a little crazy. Except for me. I'm awesome. Just ask me, I'm normal.
Are you normal?
Here's another Andy Warhol right here. And that's just okay? So, a couple of things. Okay, So those are Andy Warhol's as well. Couple of things. So when you are doing your prints, you need a printing plate. Okay? Printing plate is what the print is printed off of. Okay? You need to know that. Make sure you know what a printing plate is. We are doing relief prints using styrofoam printing plates. So our material is a styrofoam printing plate. It is a relief print. Okay? When we get to the point of printing our image, we're going to talk more about what a brayer is. We're going to talk about printing ink, and we're going to talk about a token. Okay? Token is not what you need to get on the bus. It's something else. Alright? On Schoology, there is a video for you to look at called How to Print from Styrofoam Printing Plate, I believe it's called. I want you to get on Schoology. It's a YouTube video. It's real simple and real short. It's just going to give you an idea of exactly the process, the first process that we're going to use. Okay? So go ahead, get on Schoology, and take a look at that now.